to be able to salute veterans from our country, from the state, from the county, from the city. Thank you for your presence. Thank you for your service. It's so important to our country, and certainly a lesson for the young people of today who are our country's future. I thought I might talk a little bit about the black experience in aviation. I'm sure some of you are aware, and some of you may not. There's a prelude to the story, and for you ladies here, among that prelude is Bessie Coleman, who in 1920 was an avid reader, and this new industry of aviation caught her attention. She was so enamored that she wanted to learn to fly, but because she was black, she had to go to France to be licensed. But she came home in 1920 with meager funds, bought a surplus aircraft, and went around the country, what they called back in that day barnstorming, but flying over a city, inviting people to come out to the airport, see what an aircraft can do and get their interest in this new industry of aviation. Bessie Coleman Aero Clubs were formed around the country, and a number of blacks began to get into flying. Another was Jacques Ballard, but he flew for France. Coming home, aviation wasn't an opportunity for him. He became an elevator operator in New York. In 1925, our Army War College performed a study, and I read this because I'm not trying to remember things, I'm telling you like it was. This is part of that report dated October 30th, 1925. The subject, use of Negro manpower in war. Facts bearing on the problem is in paragraph 3. The Negro is physically qualified for combat duty, but he is by nature subservient and believes himself to be inferior to the white man. He is most susceptible to the influence of crowd psychology. He is not control of himself in the fear of danger to the extent of the white man. He is mentally inferior to the white man. They go on to say what all that meant to them, and near the end of this 4-page report, action recommended. Recommended that this study be taken as basic policy for the War Department in the use of Negro manpower, and that the plan proposed herein be used as a guide in the revision of War Department General Mobilization Plan. Concurrences. The policies and plan for the use of Negro manpower proposed in this study are the culmination of several years' study by the faculty and student body of the Army War College. Folks, Washington bought that. Despite Bessie Coleman's efforts to spread the opportunities in this new business, despite the blacks that did some self-training and got into aviation in the 30s, when our country declared war to support our allies in Europe, this policy was in effect. Well, things didn't go very easy. They needed more units, and the Army finally said, we've studied the issue. We know it'll fail, but you keep pressuring, we'll experiment. We'll authorize the 99th Pursuit Squadron, fine print said, and all of the necessary support. Because of the war built, there was a civilian pilot training program. located a number of colleges around the country. And I think it was in Washington, D.C., a black at Howard University. Got his training, went next door to say, I'd like to be an Army pilot. Army said, sorry, we can't use a black pilot because we don't have any black mechanics. A young gentleman named B.O. Davis Jr. graduated from West Point in 1936 and said, I want to fly. Their answer is, we have no black image. They didn't want a white cadet or soldier saluting a black officer. So part of that was denial of training for blacks plus maintaining segregation. Well, the need continued. As I say, there said, we'll experiment. 99th Pursuit Squadron is 34 pilots, 24 aircraft, all of the necessary support, a couple hundred mechanics and technicians, those that maintain the airplane and keep it flying. And as they say, told the pilot, bring my airplane back. And then the other support, you needed medical, communications, supply, administration. That's another couple hundred people. So besides those for the squadron and all of its support, the 99th came into being with the Army expecting it to fail, to the point that of the now called Tuskegee Airmen, the first were the mechanics trained at the Chanute Field, Rantoul, Illinois, technical school, expected to fail, to the point that one of the officers, surprised at their scores in passing the exams, had them take it again, but they still did extremely well, because back then you had to have a college degree to get into the training. The mechanics did well, and they said, my gosh, we need an airfield for the pilot training. Airfields all around the country. But they found $4 million to build a separate airfield. Tuskegee Army Field was 7 miles northwest of Tuskegee, Alabama, in the location of Tuskegee Institute. I learned of the program, and sometimes folks ask me, how did you get into aviation? Well, folks, my honest answer is I was avoiding the draft. And literally, in college, at the University of Illinois, I learned to handle a rifle with Pershing rifles and enjoying that. But because I was in school, my draft board wasn't pulling my number. And I'm sure had they, which they could have and did on occasion, I would have been on the ground with a rifle in the mud. But I think it was my ROTC instructor said, well, knowing of this training of the mechanics at Chanute Field, which is just 14 miles north of the university location, said, you ought to apply for the pilot training. I did, not knowing what that really meant. But folks, after several months of waiting and being called to enter training, when I had that first ride in a PT-17, open cockpit, bi-wing, 250 horsepower, I was hooked. And that's what I pass on to young people today, is to discover their talents and so on. Among them, hopefully you find something you enjoy doing. I loved flying, to the point that that's why I spent 30 years. Of course, segregation was a part of that, because in the late 50s, when I was instantly getting out of military flying and in commercial flying, well, they didn't want me or women. It took some lawsuits in the 60s before that changed. But on the way, all I can say is, why me? How did things happen? I have no idea. But I kept getting wonderful assignments and was able to actively fly 27 of my 30 years. Talking about being hooked, you're looking at it. It was such a joy to always fly, and I flew everything they had, although one point there before the Air Force ended segregation, they said, well, you got to do something else besides fly. Some went to intelligence school, weather school. I chose to go to aircraft maintenance officer school, the same training location of those early mechanics of the now called Tuskegee Airmen. And I love that. So besides flying, I had many material and maintenance support assignments, generally from being in the field with the squadron, getting called into headquarters to perform. But it's spared, I did well for me, still enjoying flying and doing what that service called about. But as we look back on the First Squadron, 99th Pursuit Squadron, they began their training in 1941. First class had 12 cadets, and one student officer happened to be the B.O. Davis, as I mentioned, who had graduated from West Point but was denied aviation opportunity. Of the first 12, 5 graduated, but the 99th Pursuit Squadron, with its support, was combat ready in December of 1942. What did the Army do? They didn't know. No white commander wanted them. They continued training for another 3 months into 1943 and finally sent to North Africa. Attached to 33rd Fighter Group, Colonel Meyer didn't want them, so they didn't go to their base of the 33rd. They went, segregation went overseas, North Africa. They went to their own base. Pilot goes over to 33rd, gets their briefing, comes back and flying. Colonel Meyer, a few months later, told you they weren't aggressive. They only shot down one aircraft, should be patrolling Liberia. How's your interest in math? Where were the Germans in North Africa? Where is Liberia? I think you get the idea. That brought a hearing in Washington. The hearing brought an investigation. They found out that 99's bombs on target equal to the other squadrons, only been in combat a short time, so stay there. They continued on, moving out of North Africa, Sicily, out of Sicily into Italy. In the meantime, and I call the 99th Phase 1 of the Tuskegee experience. What was Phase 2? 3 additional single-engine fighter squadrons, the 100, 301st, and 302nd becoming 332nd Fighter Group. Combat ready in the P-40, and he said, oh, you are going to do some patrol work. Switch to the P-39. Still leaving training site on schedule, leaving in December of 43, landing directly in Italy, January of 44. Same time the 99th was moving out of Sicily into Italy, and I said, well, there was one little bit of integration because they were then attached to the 79th Fighter Group. Colonel Bill Bates was just glad to have more pilots, more aircraft over the Anzio beachhead time frame. 99th shot down over, I think it was about an 8-day time frame, more than a dozen German aircraft. So it was a matter of opportunity. In the meantime, the 332nd with that P-39 had moved directly to Italy, and we were patrolling Naples Harbor waterways to Anzio beachhead in the P-39. Spring of 44, we realized, 15th Air Force realized that we needed protection of American lives being lost in the bomb raids, because with each plane going down, 10 American lives were lost. So they pulled 4 groups from 12th Tactical Air Force to move to the Adriatic side of Italy. 332nd was one of those groups. We gave the P-39 to the Russians, picked up P-47 Thunderbolts. And that's interesting because folks back then, they didn't have time to go to school, nor did the mechanics have time to do other than we officers did. Read the tech orders, they got their hands greasy. We sat in the cockpit and found where the instruments were. In fact, I said that the crew chief could start it, I can fly it. And went about the duty that we were assigned. So the 332nd Fighter Group is what I call the second phase of the Tuskegee experience. When I graduated in June of '43, my instructor said, "Too bad they don't have a bomber program for you guys, because I think you'd make a good bomber pilot." I didn't ask him what it meant by that. But he didn't know they had already approved, and 3 months later, they started medium bomber training at Tuskegee Army Airfield. 477th Bomber Group, medium Mitchell B-25. Again, folks, with all of the pilots and all of the necessary support. And I repeat that so when you look at the total Tuskegee experience, you're not only talking about the some 900 pilots that came out of the program, but you're talking about the some 13 to 14,000 support people in all of the phases needed for those units, 4 single-engine fighter squadrons, 4 medium bomb squadrons to operate separate. And I guess they used to say the word equal, but it didn't quite fit, if you understand. So that 477th Bomb Group would be the third phase of the experience. The 332nd performed exceptionally well under B.O. Davis Jr. as their commander. He let us, I'd say, race second. First lieutenants had always wanted to go off happy hunting to be shoot down 5 aircraft, be recognized for that. But he said, the task is saving American lives. We stick with the bombers unless they're attacked. If some of the German Focke-Wulfs or Messerschmitts tried to attack bombers we were escorting, an element would be dispatched to fight them off. That turned out to be successful. But folks, the Army never changed the policy. War's over in '45. 332nd Fighter Group comes home. In the meantime, the bomb group's in training to go to the Pacific. It turns out that in their training, Colonel Selway with General Hunter's wanted to continue segregation, even though Army regulations had been written to say there should be no segregation based on race, creed, or color. We've added a few more things to that phrase, but how did he do it? Colonel Selway wrote a base regulation to say on his base, trainees could only use the facilities he designated. Who was in training? 477 Bomb Group, black pilots training to go to the Pacific. Oh, we don't want black officers going in the White Officers Club. On my base, those in training can only use the facility I designated. Well, officers of the 477 knew what Army regulations stated, and also at that time, your dues were already out of your pay before you received your money. So they had every right to go to the club, did so in 2s and 3s peacefully, but were turned away. Colonel Selway, unhappy, called the officers in and said, please reread my regulation and sign that you'll abide. 101 refused because they knew what Army regulations specified, were immediately shipped off from Seymour, Indiana to Godman Field, Kentucky, behind with guards, dogs, barbed wire, all of that. Worse treated worse than German prisoners of war at the adjacent Fort Knox. But that brought a hearing. And this came from Pittsburgh Courier, I believe, newspaper that said we were fighting for 2 victories, victory against Hitler in Europe, victory against racism here at home. That hearing, I don't know, they sent Selway somewhere because they realized he didn't have authority to violate Army regulations. But the Army said, wow, what do we do? Now we're talking 1946. 3 seconds back at home, the Army said, we'll have a composite group. Another phase of the Tuskegee experience. We'll keep 2 of the B-25 squadrons, reactivate the 99th. Godman feels too small. Oh, we'll relocate at Lockburn Air Base, now Rickenbacker, south of Columbus, Ohio. Lo and behold, when training ended in 46, those of us still down in Tuskegee, Alabama, where did we go? Lockburn Air Base, south of Columbus, Ohio. 1947, the Air Force separated from the ground forces, and they determined 2 things. They said, you know, we need to use people based on training and experience and where needed, not their happenstance of birth. And we're not getting enough money to keep Lockburn Air Base open and meet our requirements for assignment of units to carry out our mission. We need to integrate. Their decision was backed by a very courageous President, Harry Truman, who a few months later issued Executive Order 9981 mandating all of the services need to integrate. You need to study his history to fully understand his position. He's the president said, the buck stops here, Congress is doing nothing. His advisor said, you're moving too fast. So we also passed a regulation saying there should be equal opportunity and equal access throughout the federal government. Well, these are statements of an event or an happening, and everything takes time. The Air Force finally closed Lockburn Air Base 1st of July 1949, and we were scattered around the world. A little ahead of that, those of you interested in history, I think, how many of you know about Top Guns? Raise a hand. You know what Top Guns mean? Well, later on, the Air Force began to write their history, and part of that history would be the story of the Top Guns. That first writer put down 1949, unknown. Guess who the Top Guns were? Pilots 332nd Fighter Group flying P-47Ns were the first Top Guns, and at that time the reciprocating engines did not compete against the jets that we had. But those pilots were the first Top Guns of that first United States Air Force meet in May of 49. As I say, July, we were scattered around the world. And folks, for many years, we got better assignments overseas than we got back here at home. That wing-based operation at Lockburn, as I say, was closed with B.O. Davis Jr. as the wing and base commander, 1949. When I became commander of Richards Goodbar Air Base in the 1840th Air Base Wing in 1972, first such assignment here in the States at that level. Many immediately followed. It's interesting, sometimes once something happens, the door is open and others. But that brought about a change. And as I say, and mentioned earlier, the Army never changed the policy. That was unfortunate, but you have to look at Army history perhaps to fully understand. But our United States Air Force led the country in providing integration and equal access and equal opportunity. The Army and Navy really got on board with the President's declaration during the Korean war time frame. As I say, because of enjoying flying, and when I was interested in commercial flying, they didn't want me or women. It took some lawsuit change in the early 60s before that changed. But why and how my love of flying seemed to, for some reason, well, I don't have an answer of why it worked out, but I kept getting good assignments, continued to enjoy flying, and happy to stand here before you as a veteran of our United States Air Force with a combat record, fighter combat record of 100 or more combat missions in each of 3 wars. Well, I really participated in the 4th war, but we didn't get any credit for it, the Cold War. But it's fortunate we didn't fire anything because it was aimed at Russia. But I participated as commander, first as deputy and then as commander of the 7230th Support Squadron during the Jupiter missile deployment. We went overseas unknown because we didn't know which of the countries was going to accept the missile. It finally was Italy, and spent 2.5 wonderful years again in Italy in that respect. But certainly, well, you've heard of my story, and perhaps there might be I think we got time, they didn't put a clock up there for me to see if I've talked too long or Thank you so much for your attention.